polarizing views. So what was it like being like directly in that kind of environment?
Yeah, I had a lot of comments like, you know, you're a college boy. What are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why are you here? Why did you make this choice?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to do this. Why did you do it? And I did a lot of, you know, like backpedaling and justifying, and you know, after a while I was scratching my head wondering why I did it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've come to understand it, you know, subsequently, but you know, a lot of individuals, once they knew what my background was, I mean, I had, you know, 3.5 years of college, I had a semester left to graduate, and people are saying, "Are you crazy? Why? What are you doing here?"
Mm-hmm.
And but it never, I mean, I never really felt bad about the decision.
Mm-hmm.
I never said I should have never done that, and even to this day, it's the best thing best decision I ever made. Because it really, and we'll get to this later, but
Mm-hmm.
it really defined my career and the trajectory of my career. It was a hallmark experience, which is unlike anything else that I've ever experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm. When were you in Vietnam? Like, how old were you, and what? You kind of already touched upon this, but what was your personality and beliefs and values at the time?
Yeah, I was in Vietnam during 1970,
Mm-hmm.
so it was the post-Tet offensive,
Mm-hmm.
and also Nixon at that time had talked about drawing down the troops. So at 1970 is really the pivotal point where we're starting to bring massive amounts of troops home during that time, and we were de-escalating the war.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't as much action as there had been previous to that, because up until the Tet, it seems like Vietnam is defined by the Tet offensive. You know, and everything up until the Tet really escalated, and then since then it just kind of de-escalated. And I think that you know, it's, well, for whatever reasons, the United States wanted to be out, politically wanted to be out as well, and there was no more support at home. I mean, the individuals, families, and the population in the United States just were fed up with it. Because it got nowhere, it was getting nowhere, and no one could really give a good, solid reason for why all of these individuals were dying and why we continue to be there. I was there, spent time at it's called LZ Professional, which was by the Laotian border, and it was just south of the DMZ. I was in Chu Lai. I was with the 196th Infantry with the Americal Division, and which is in Chu Lai, which is right along the eastern seaboard, by the south, next to the South China Sea, and it was south of Da Nang, south of the DMZ, and actually it had a kind of dubious distinction, because the 196th Infantry and the Americal Division is where the massacre had occurred at My Lai. And I was in the same company as the individuals, you know, Colonel Calley, Lieutenant Calley, who had been adjudicated and court-martialed as a result of the My Lai massacre. Well, I came on the heels of that, and I went into the same company that had committed those atrocities. So
about the culture while you were there?
I knew nothing about Vietnam before I went there. I knew we were at war in Vietnam, and I knew geographically where it was located, and I knew, you know, the politics, the contentious politics of, you know, North Vietnam and South Vietnam, and I knew a little bit about that because I'd done that research that I wrote for the paper, and also you read what you read from the newspaper as well as the nightly news and things of that nature. But I really didn't. I had no idea what it was like to be there, and I was caught by how beautiful the country is. You know, I can remember walking through mountains and valleys where you'd see no evidence of human beings at all. I mean, it was just beautiful mountains and valleys and streams and wildlife. You know, it's like you'd encounter a wild boar, and actually there were tigers. I never encountered that. One of my friends actually encountered a tiger. So it was truly where I was. Now, I wasn't in the south, I was in the north, and it was very much not picked the infantry.
Oh, okay.
The infantry picked me.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I should say the DoD picked me to be in the infantry.
Okay.
And so infantry training is for the most part learning how to fire weapons. I mean, your job as an infantryman is a ground pounder, a grunt, you know, a basic, it's cannon fodder, what many people call it. I mean, you're the first line of defense. Now there's different weapons that you could choose. There's one, I served with this one guy who was a really good friend of mine. He was from Hawaii. We called him Pineapple, and he carried an M60, and there's grenade launchers and machine guns and various other kind of light weapons infantry. So I was trained in light weapons infantry, but for the most part what I carried was an M16. And so, I mean, what you train, the training, and I trained in Fort Jackson, Fort Jackson, which is in Columbia, South Carolina. And there's nothing that they could have done to prepare us for as I look at it in retrospect. Sure, you learn how to fire a rifle. You learn how to low crawl. You know, you learn how to endure certain kind of things. But there's no way that you can simulate real combat in the jungle. Now that's completely different because you never know where the enemy is. I tell you this, the training, and this is kind of coincides with what you asked before, the way that I was trained. One of the pictures that I gave you shows me standing on a log, and it says VC log. Now that VC log was placed at the end of a sandy kind of pit that is about, I'd say, 50 to 60 feet long. What we had to do, and by the way, that sandy pit, there was urine, feces, all kinds of stuff that ran through that. And also was a runoff from not only from some of the latrines in the area, but from the kitchen. Our training was to low crawl through that with a knife in our mouth, right? And so we're low crawling through it, and that's probably where I got the cellulitis, you know, from an infection from that stuff. But once you got to the end of that, like 50 or 60 foot track, we were supposed to take our bayonet out of our mouth, which we carried in our mouth, and stab the VC log in a violent frenzy. And the idea was, of course, is that we're transferring all our angst and anger, you know, from having to low crawl and all this sewage and everything, to stabbing and transfer that anger onto the VC log. But we got it. We understood what they were doing. I mean, and so we understood that what they're trying to do is get us angry at the Viet Cong. We were really angry at them for making us do it. So, I mean, psychology didn't work as far as that concerned. Anyway, that was kind of some of my training. That was probably more hands-on training, the most hands-on training I got in terms of